Right, hello, and welcome to a little sort of Sonic Talk extra special kind of tutorial side of things. I don't know if you're a regular listener, you may have noticed that I was really excited when Yoad explained how one aspect of his Logic Pro setup was used to utilize the Beatstep Pro. And the Beatstep Pro, as we know, I've got one here actually. Yoad's got one there. You know, you've got all these pads and you've got these knobs. And what Yoad's been able to do is create an environment that allows him to voice individual sounds on pads just by turning a knob. So effectively, what you could do is, you can have like 16 sounds, each with a rotary encoder of up to 128 values. So when you hit it, you can voice it very, very quickly. So you can have 128 kicks, 128 snares, hi-hats, blah, 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 across 16 voices. And he's achieved this by some nifty programming in his Logic environment, and he promised that he would show us how this was done, and he's chosen to pick the time now, very kindly given us a bit of time to show us how that works. So Yoad, thank you so much for this, and it's fascinating because I for one, I find the assigning of sounds to pads, it's a bit of a creation killer, isn't it? It's a creative buzz killer.
Absolutely, it's a workflow inhibitor, and basically, when you load up a kit on your keyboard or pads or whatever, basically you end up with something like that. You may like it and you may want to use it, but what if you wanted to use a different snare drum? You would have to go in this case to EXS, find the kit, the key that was playing, load a new sample, browse it, audition it, autoplay, no autoplay, and all that, and it is a buzz killer, like you said. So what I wanted to achieve is something which will allow me to just play the pads and change just the kick drum sound while I play, and you can turn over the whole vibe of a track.
Yeah,
it's nice to be able to have free access to the different elements of this pattern.
The other way that I always used to do it was to have like a sample instrument that was just kicks, just snares, but then you'd sort of put the kick in, change tracks, and it sort of exploded the process into, rather than maybe a finger drumming thing or a very quick way to program. So this gets around that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The first step will be to create 16 EXS or whatever sampler you're using, loaded with one with just kicks, one with just snares, hi-hat, and so forth. The way I have it done here allows me also to use the Beatstep Pro internal kind of programming capabilities, which is very nice in its own right.
So you can use the internal sequencer to record your drum patterns.
Yeah, so I can just go do that. Now I need to find a different sound.
Right, so the
so
pattern's
something like that.
Okay, right.
Yeah, while it's running, and I can.
Right, okay, that's nifty. So I noticed, are you going into control mode to change it to the sound?
Yeah, now I have some randomness. Yeah, I need to go into control. That's the kind of slightly confusing thing, but that still allows me to. Well, that's quite a shitty pattern, but anyway. But yeah, so basically the way I'm achieving it is by having this nice and simple layout, and what it does, it grabs the input straight from under Logic's nose. Basically, I'm hijacking the MIDI signal before Logic gets it and gets to record it, so I can do the processing and of changing of transposing the pad note number, and then Logic will record it after it's been transposed. Right. So here I have this object which is connected to 16 instruments. The first one, what it does is it filters out anything except for this note. So what it says is filter matching events, and it's set to C1 unequal. So anything that is not equal to C1 will be filtered out, and that allows me to only process this specific pad in this row. After that, I have this controller, which is controlled. It's set to be controlled by the knob, which is in this case it's controller number 22, and that's how I started, because I wanted to be compatible with machine.
Right. Okay.
On machine, when it's set to MIDI controller, you can't change the note number and all that. It's predefined. So I want to be able to do it on both. So the first one is controlled by, this fader is controlled by controller 22, and what it transmits is like a pseudo event, which is controlling the transform operation number 1 on the next one.
Right, so it's a kind of complex shape. Can I just pause you there? So to start with, I mean, Logic allows you to intercept the physical MIDI inputs that are connected to your device, whether they be USB or whatever, and transform events before they end up in the record track of the sequencer. So that's essentially what you're doing here, yeah.
Exactly. Basically, the summing of everything that I do here will get sent to Logic's input, and Logic will only record the end result of this kind of very simple note transpose, but it's still very effective and convenient. So this fader, you can see that when I turn the knob for each one, it changes a number here.
Right.
And that number basically changes the number of the second of the first data byte,
right,
which is the note number. It's a bit buggy, and this display doesn't show what it does in real time, but it does it. And after that, I go and I go and filter out anything that is not transmitted on MIDI channel 1. So basically, the way I have it laid out is that I have each drum pad set to its own MIDI channel.
Right.
And each controller set to the equivalent one that I want to change operator 1. And then I filter anything that is not on that channel.
Right.
It's just there to make sure that I don't end up with, because I'm recording basically 16 inputs now.
Yeah.
If I have anything playing to where it's not supposed to play, I'll end up with a big mess. Now, the reason I'm also assigning each pad to its own MIDI channel is because it allows me to then split it back to its channels. I'll show that in a minute.
And then, because they will then need to go to each of their respective EXS instances.
Exactly,
right?
And Logic does it for you, which is very nifty. So what I can there's one kind of downside to the whole thing, which is Logic gets a little bit confused because with all that, and the first few notes that you record are going to be out of time. So, but that's a small price to pay. So I'm going to record a pattern quickly. You see, so that's not my timing. Let me sound a nicer hi-hat sound. So you see how it's really easy to just change the whole vibe of your track. Yeah, something like that. I can't use the first bar, unfortunately, but I can.
Oh, right. So because it's thinking about what it needs to do. Yeah.
Something like that, but it's only for the first couple of notes, and then it's fine. So now, something like that. Now, if you look inside, you will see that each one is assigned. So the kick is channel 1, the snare is channel 2, and the hi-hat is channel 3. I can put the first one on channel 1, and then I do this, and I have them assigned to their respective channels.
And
so if
is all that within a folder? Do you kind of keep it neat and tidy by putting it in a folder, or you just keep it on the?
Not at all. Oh yeah, I mean it's just like a track stack.
Right. Okay.
Just so you can fold it. It's like in Cubase, you know, so you can fold it. It's not doing anything. It's just like a visual, more like a visual thing.
Right.
So basically, that allows me to record something and then have it. So I'm just gonna do something which isn't musical, but
right, just so you've got a lot of individual note channelization.
But each one can be changed. And now the result of that, if I put it on MIDI channel 1 and then split it, you can see that it occupies all the different EXS instances, and you can see that when I changed the value of a knob, it actually reflects in the note number being recorded into Logic.
Well, that's neat. So that, I mean, I guess there's two ways of doing that as well. I mean, because if you're working with it as a machine, you can kind of, before you hit record, you can have the Beatstep Pro internal sequencer running the groove. So you go, yeah, that's what I want, and then do it in. Or you can record a basic pattern, and then you've got it channelized out, and you might say, well, I'll change the hi-hat, and you just edit the note value of the hi-hat track sort of manually via the DAW. Right, okay.
Exactly. So yeah, I mean, and obviously you can then change the whole set of EXS samplers to different, you know, to load like whatever.
Hi-hat bank samples 2 or whatever. Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. So I mean, the idea is each bank would be up to 128 different samples, or you could have velocity layers on those. You could do all sorts of stuff with that.
Whatever. Yeah. And now, in order to, because this is only an input object, I can't route the recorded pattern to it, because Logic doesn't know what to do with it, because it's looking at a physical input.
Right.
So it can't play back. It's not a real object, basically. So I then had to create another object which will play back through the same kind of MIDI processing chain. So if I then record something, let's say I'll try to create a nicer pattern here. Let's swing. What's it about? So now I can just.
So you're flipping the sound because you're playing the pattern from the Beatstep Pro at the moment, right?
Yeah, so it's actually playing the Beatstep Pro. Let's say that, not a brilliant pattern, but whatever. And then I find that step time input it really lends itself to kind of very 80s.
Yes.
You know, it just happens, you know what I mean? Maybe because that's how it was always conceived. And then I have the mixer here. And then I can record some real-time stuff. Yeah, basically, now I can still freely change the sounds of any.
Right. Okay. But of any of the internal.
Yeah. So I can.
Before you then record the final result into Logic, yeah.
Yeah, and then if I introduce some randomness and.
So you could effectively kind of jam with the Beatstep Pro that's obviously synced to the master tempo, and then record the output.
Yeah, I can change. Basically, and then record it back to Logic, and let me just record it in. For that, I need to put it in sync, USB, and just hit record. And I love the randomness.
And also you can put stutter steps and roll steps and all that kind of stuff in as well.
Exactly. And now I ended up with this thing, which is but each note is actually assigned to a different MIDI channel.
So you just split it out, right?
So I just drag it here, do this, and then I have really like that setup.
That's really neat. So once you've got all of your objects split out, that gets routed, hardwire routed to the, not hardwire, but within the environment gets routed to all of those individual EXS tracks. It doesn't then go to the, and then presumably that goes to the sequencer input.
It goes to both.
Hence, when you're recording that, because Logic is one of the DAWs. Not all DAWs do this, so that can record multi-channel MIDI inputs rather than channelizing it to a single channel. That's right.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's a very cool feature, and the fact that you can then split it like that so easily, it's really nice.
Brilliant. Yoad, thank you ever so much for sharing that with you. I mean, it sounded simple. I mean, it is simple, but there's a number of steps that you have to go through. So
yeah, but what I wanted to make sure is that what I record is actually the
right note.
Exactly. The right note, and not a note that I will be processing later.
Okay, thank you very much for sharing that with us. That's great. And I know you do a lot of stuff in your Logic environment because, your setup, it's important for you to be able to reach for anything and play anything. So this is just one aspect of it. And I know you've put a lot of time into that, right?
Yeah, maybe next time we can show the setup I have. I'll just give a quick snippet of that. The way the BCR controls all the synths I have here, all the ones that are capable of receiving sysx and controller commands and things like that. So this is one which is quite complex, is the Q, which spans across 4 BCR pages.
Wow!
So that kind of thing. So yeah, it's a nice, it's a really powerful tool, the Logic environment. Unfortunately, it works only on MIDI and not on audio.
The thing that's so important is, it sort of highlights the time invested in kind of customizing your workflow to make things easier and quicker is time well invested, I would say.
Sometimes I like doing the nerdy stuff more than I like creating the actual beats, you know what I mean? But that's why I found myself developing software and products for Waves, which is a very, very much in that direction. So I like both, and I think they both kind of feed a different need or desire in me to it's a bit of an OCD thing as well, to doing all that stuff, because you need to get it right and it has to be right, and you spend a lot of time making it kind of so compact and accessible and all that. I like that.
Yoad, thank you very much for your time. That's it for this sort of impromptu episode. I don't know if it's Sonic Lab or Sonic Talk. We'll figure that out in the edit. Anyway, thanks very much for this. See you next time.
Bye. Take care.